presenting your product or opportunity to your prospects. We've talked about the first two skills of identifying prospects and inviting them to learn more about your product or opportunity. As you've learned, you'll be inviting them to review a tool or attend some sort of event. If they are reviewing a tool by themselves and you're not around, there's nothing for you to do. Just follow up when you said you would. If you're physically with them, there are some things you need to understand, and one of the biggest is you are not the issue. This was a tough one for me to accept. When I first got started, I read everything I could, listened to everything I could, and attended all the training sessions I could. I thought the most important thing I could do was become an expert on all the facts associated with my company. So if anyone asked me any questions, I'd be right there with the answers. Sounds logical, right? I would sit down with someone and say, let me tell you all about our products. Let me tell you all about our company. Let me tell you all about our compensation plan. Let me tell you all about our incredible support system. There are big problems with that approach if you want to build a large and successful organization. For me, the first problem was, no matter how much I learned, there would still be questions that stumped me. And since I was presenting myself as the expert, if I got stumped, that might make the prospect question the whole opportunity. The second problem was, most of my prospects knew I wasn't an expert. So when I came to them and presented myself as an authority figure, they knew it wasn't true. It actually made them more skeptical. The third problem was, even if I was successful at becoming an expert, the other distributors in my organization didn't necessarily have that same desire or willingness to learn. As a result, I was the go-to guy for every single presentation. There's no way to create an organization that will duplicate with this approach. And without duplication, network marketing is just a job. In the early days, that's what network marketing was for me, a job. I had no duplication because I made myself the issue. But I was determined, and I started to observe and take careful note of how the most successful distributors did their presentations. The pros never made themselves the issue. More than that, they never presented themselves as an expert. They acted as a consultant who connected the prospect to tools, events, or other distributors to help them become educated. If the prospect asked a question, they would guide them to the answer, but they wouldn't give the answer directly. This baffled me until I started to comprehend duplication. The pros knew they could sign the person up by dazzling them with their knowledge and experience, but they also knew it would take a long time for their new distributor to do the same thing. So they came up with a simpler approach. It was around this time I heard a concept that has stuck with me ever since. In network marketing, it doesn't matter what works. It only matters what duplicates. This should be a guiding principle for every network marketing professional. The pros use tools instead of their own wisdom. The pros use live events instead of their own presentations. The pros use other distributors to give the facts instead of giving them themselves. The pros don't present themselves as experts. They just invite people to learn more about the product or opportunity and let the third-party resource provide the information. The pros bring passion, enthusiasm, excitement, and belief. If you ever watch a pro at work, you'll see a fire in them that's contagious. Make passion, enthusiasm, excitement, and belief your priority. Then invite professionally and let the third-party resource do the rest. In addition to learning how to effectively present your product or opportunity during your personal recruiting efforts, it's also important to learn how to present your opportunity to groups of people. I've heard it said, and I think it's true, the person with the marker makes the money. In other words, the person in front of the room giving the presentation usually has a higher than average income. When I first got started, I was deathly afraid of speaking in front of people. But I was ambitious, and since everyone said this was an important skill, I was determined to master it. I started by learning how to give a short and effective testimonial. Learning to tell my story was extremely valuable in building my business and has been to this day. People aren't interested in how much you know, but they are interested in your story, as long as you don't bore them to death with it. I worked on my story for a while, and after tweaking it a time or two, here's what I came up with. Hi, my name is Eric Worre, and I'm a retired underachiever. I had 18 jobs by the time of 23 and was starting to think my future wasn't looking so good. I was embarrassed by my lack of results, and I was desperately looking for a way to make something of my life. In January of 1988, I was introduced to network marketing, and it has changed my life. Instead of being afraid of the future, now I'm excited about it. And then I would insert whatever was appropriate based upon my current levels of success. The theme of my story was, if I could do it, anyone could do it. And it worked. I use it all the time in hotel meetings, in home meetings, on three-way phone calls, on conference calls, you name it. No matter what your background is, you can craft a compelling personal story. I've found every good story has 4 elements. 1, your background. 2, the things you didn't like about your background. 3, how network marketing or your company came to the rescue. And 4, your results or how you feel about your future. Take some time to create your story and start telling it every chance you get. Next, I decided to master my company's opportunity presentation. Again, the concept of modeling successful people came into play. The top earner in my company was extremely powerful and effective. In addition, he did the same exact presentation every single time, just about word for word. So I recorded his presentation and transcribed it by hand onto a legal pad. When I completed that step, I recorded my own voice doing that presentation. I did it word for word, same stories, same jokes. Everything was his exact presentation. After I was done, I played it back, and it was terrible. My voice had no energy, I was boring, I hated it. So I recorded it again and again and again until it was acceptable. In the end, I had an audio cassette with my presentation on it. And I listened to it over and over in my car. I'll bet I listened to that presentation 500 times. And by that time, I had it memorized. I knew it backwards and forwards. I could start from any part of the presentation and take it from there. You would not believe the confidence this gave me. I went from being afraid to do the presentation to actively looking for opportunities to give it. I did the presentation on conference calls, in home meetings, on three-way calls, and any place else I could find. I became a regular presenter at our local meetings and continued to move up to bigger and better venues, even being asked to speak at company conventions. For me, the evolution of becoming a presenter went through several stages. 1, learning my story. 2, learning the standard opportunity presentation. And 3, learning different training presentations. One big defining moment as a presenter came in 1993. I was 29 years old and starting to make a name for myself in network marketing. I was having a conversation with the CEO of the company and the #1 distributor at that time. I can't remember exactly how the topic came up, but I recall saying something to the CEO like, well, he, the top distributor, might be a better networker than I am right now, but I can outspeak him any time. It was meant as a joke, but the CEO raised his eyebrows and said, okay, son, I'll tell you what. We have our big convention coming up. Over 14,000 people will be in attendance. I'll give you both the same amount of time, and we'll have a private contest. I'll handpick a few judges, and they'll vote on who did a better job. Wow. Now I was really on the hook. I wasn't a huge leader. I didn't have as big an organization or reputation at the time as the top earner, so I did the only thing I could control. I started to prepare like my life hung in the balance. I chose a theme. I wrote my talk, and I rewrote it over and over. I did research. I practiced. I recorded myself doing the speech. I did everything I could possibly do. When the day came, I'd never felt so nervous in my entire life. Talking to 14,000 people is like talking to an ocean. But my preparation served me well. I steadied my 29-year-old insecure self and delivered. The response was overwhelming. The crowd went wild, literally. I felt numb when I walked off the stage as they were still cheering and sat there while the top earner gave his speech. He did a fine job, but I have to admit to you, it felt so good to have the CEO come up and congratulate me for winning our private little contest. It was definitely a defining moment. That speech was lost for a very long time, but a copy was recently discovered. If you'd like to hear it, we'll include it at the end of this chapter. My voice sounds quite a bit younger, but it's still me. To summarize this skill set, remember a few important things. 1, when you're prospecting, you're the messenger, not the message. Get yourself out of the way and use a third-party tool. 2, learn to tell stories in a way that will make your prospects curious to hear more. And 3, when it comes to presenting in front of a group of people, preparation is key. When you're prepared, it's fun. And as promised, here's my speech talking in front of 14,000 people as a 29-year-old young man.
Over 200 years ago, there was a revolution, an American Revolution, an event that literally changed the course of history. It was led by a group of unsatisfied people. People were tired of being told what they could do and when they could do it. People were fed up with their lack of choices and their lack of personal freedoms. People fed up with their lives being controlled by others. Fed up with being oppressed, fed up with being manipulated. They finally said, enough, I've had it, and I'm not going to live like this anymore. Our ancestors were people that took full responsibility for what happened to them. It was that spirit that ignited a country and formed what is now a giant in the free world. I have a question for you. Where's that spirit today? It's time for another revolution. Let me explain one of the laws of the universe. It's called the law of use, and it says simply this: whatever you don't use, you lose. Lack of use causes loss. Ambition unused declines. Faith unused decreases. If you don't use your skills, you lose your skills. If you don't use your freedom, you lose your freedom. Freedom does not come automatically. It's not attained and then handed down to us as an inheritance. It must be achieved each day. At the turn of the century, in the year 1900, less than 10% of us worked for other people or the government. Over 90% of us were self-employed. We were an independent people. In 1980, only 80 years later, over 90% of us worked for the other people or the government. Less than 10% of us were self-employed. We changed from an independent people to a dependent people. We'd slowly shifted from a people who took full responsibility for everything that happened to them to a people who've become talented and practiced at the art of blaming others for their problems. Our giant has fallen asleep. Our forefathers didn't say, who's going to take care of me? They simply said, all I ask is the opportunity to be free and the ability to take care of myself and my family. Today, we elect officials who will quote-unquote take care of us. We cry out against anyone who dares to ask us to provide more value in the workplace. We do everything we can to spread around the suffering in our society, and yet no one is willing to step up and be part of the solution. We've slowly changed from a society that compensates based on value to a society that compensates based on entitlement and seniority. What we've come to believe is our due. We act as if someone actually owes us a living. Part of this change is due to the dramatic rise of conformity in our society. We're all taught to conform. Incredible pressures are put on us every day to do things, quote-unquote, the right way. And yet no one asks the question, is this really the right way? A man once said, I'm just a collection of mirrors reflecting what everyone expects of me. We live our lives to please those around us, and the scary thing is, the people around us are doing exactly the same thing. Psychologist Rollo May calls us outer-directed people. We don't act, we only react. We seek not to be outstanding, but to fit in. We're able to respond, but not to choose. Perhaps that's why a wise man once said, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. In order to change, we need to become inner-directed people. People with our own purpose. People who are not easily swayed by the opinions of others. And that's difficult because from a very early age, we look to the opinions of others to orient ourselves and to validate our decisions and our actions. Nietzsche said, we need more strong people in this world because the weak, by their sheer mass, are forcing weak ideals and weak values on us all. Today's massive social and economic changes are waking this slumbering giant. Some people may not be ready right now for the changes happening today in today's society. It doesn't matter if they're ready or not. An old proverb says, if a man wants his dreams to come true, he must first wake up. I, for one, am glad for the radical changes in our society because I believe that within that crisis, we will find that independent spirit that once pioneered this country. Some of us are finally ready to change. The displacement of our workforce has caused many of us to start searching for something better. Moving products and moving services is our business and our goal, but what we are becoming in the pursuit of that goal is a larger and much more important issue. The rekindling of our independent spirit has more lasting value. There's no more noble a business than the business that encourages the development of people. Every living organism has one and only one central need in life: to fulfill its own potentialities.